Hi, welcome to Gridiron Gurus for the Kennebec Journal and Morning Sentinel. I'm Travis Lazarczyk, joined again this week by Drew Bonifant. Drew, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
And we're joined this week by Coach Matt Friedman from Skowhegan Area High School. Coach, thanks for coming.
Oh, my pleasure.
Let's start out. We'll just talk about these last two tough games you guys have had. Definitely seeing the iron of the PTC Class B in Brewer and then Brunswick.
Yeah, absolutely. Two teams that are very similar in makeup, both very big, strong, formidable offense and defensive lines, both teams with more than one good running back. Against that, 2 weeks in a row, we just could not hold up to the run game.
Now you got another team in Messalonskee that probably runs just as well as both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Messalonskee kind of gives us the same kind of issues that we've seen for the last 2 weeks. So it's up to us to determine, on Friday night if we've fixed the issues that we had.
They got something different going, or might be different from other teams where they have three players: Tyler Lewis, Pelletier, and Colby Dexter ran for over 100 yards on their last win over Nokomis. Do you approach that differently as a coach, where you have three players who you have to be wary of? Does that make it any tougher? How does that kind of affect your coaching?
What it does is it makes you have to play a sound defense in all facets. I mean, you can't overload one side. You can't look to tendencies because Brunswick was the same way this week. If you try to stop their belly, then they're going to hit you with the buck sweep. If you try to stop buck sweep, they're going to hit you with a power toss. So, those types of offenses just have an answer to everything that you can try to do. So you have to be sound everywhere.
Do you see across the league mostly teams that have those, bell cow running backs where they're going to those guys 20 plus times a game, or do you see mostly versatile combinations like the one Messalonskee has?
Well, Messalonskee and Brunswick are both similar in that they have multiple running backs. Brewer, while they have a couple of good backs and a couple of good tailbacks and a good fullback, they tend to feed Trey the ball the most, and with good reason. He's a stud. Sure. But their backup, not Dustin Ireland. It's Ireland. I can't think of his first name now. And their fullback are both great runners too. So, I guess if you have those kind of horses, you're going to ride them.
Brewer and Brunswick play each other this week. You've seen them both. How do you see that kind of shaping up?
It's definitely going to be a battle. It's hard for me to take sides with either one, but if I had to choose, I'd say Brunswick might be a little bit more athletic, especially on defense. Yeah.
How are you guys on the injury front? I know Cam Barnes wasn't able to go last week, and along with a couple other guys, are you guys getting more healthy?
Yeah, Cam is definitely on the road to recovery. He's practiced all this week, so we look forward to having him back in the lineup. My starting left tackle is out with a nasty case of poison sumac.
Oh, jeez.
Just what you need at this time of year, right?
Yeah, right. So we've had to juggle some guys around on the offensive line a little bit. But, those guys are game, and they're willing to step in whenever they're called upon. So we're going to get by.
Okay. Is there any difference at this point of the year you're in the second half of the season, you're starting to see how things might be shaking out come playoff time? Is there any difference in terms of how you approach game plans, how you approach practices with that versus how things were going in the beginning of September? Or is it pretty much you do the same thing that you've been doing every single week to this point?
Right. Well, we try to keep most things consistent, but there are certainly things that you change up. We spend more time on scheme probably in practice and a little bit less time on teaching technique. So your individual periods might be a little bit shorter, where your team period is a little longer, because you want to make sure that your players understand what they're going to be going up against. I think your bench probably shortens up a little bit too.
Okay, looking at some of the other games in the Pine Tree Conference Class B, Drew, Coney's got a big game with Hamden this week.
Yeah, it's a weird situation where they're 1-4 in a pretty loaded conference, and yet they're still very much in the playoff thick of things. If they beat Hampton, they have coaches here, Skowhegan team coming up, which will be a tough game. But then they have Gardner, which they match up well with, and Lippert was talking about, Coach Lippert and Coney was talking about how those teams are they're not as much of a run-heavy team as the Brewers and the Brunswicks that they played already, which really beat them up.
Right.
But if they beat Hampton, they'll have the tiebreaker over Hampton, and they'll both be at 2-4. and Hampton also has to play. I think it's either Brunswick or Brewer at the end of the year.
Right.
So if that doesn't go their way, Coney could, just by winning 2 out of 3 here, if they win this week,
Yeah,
could
and
still be very much in the thick of it.
There's certainly precedent in this league with teams with a slow start. Last year, Lawrence started 0-4, wins the last 4 games, and gets in.
Yeah.
Let's look at the Big Ten now. We got a big game for Madison, who's at 5-0 and leading that conference, going down to Bar Harbor to face MDI, who is 4-1. Coach, you were at Madison before you were at Skowhegan. You know the coaching staff there and probably some of the players. How do you see the Bulldogs doing?
Well, I'll tell you what, we do a lot of stuff with Madison in the summer. We practice together a few times. We do a lot of 7-on-7 with them. I know Scott Franzose real well. He was my defensive coordinator and really my most trusted assistant when I was there. And he's a detail-oriented guy. And right now, with the athletes that he has, not only physically but the mentally capable athletes that he has, they've really taken to his system, and he's showing you what they can do.
Of course, if they do lose, it could set up an interesting kind of tiebreaker scenario where you'd have possibly 3 teams in that league at 7-1, and with you not playing everybody in the Big Ten, it would come down to Crabtree points, where Winslow automatically would drop to 3 because they don't play Old Town, who is worth more. So then if we could conceivably see the game between 2 winless teams right now, John Bapps and Waterville, determine who is number 1, because Madison doesn't play John Bapps, MDI doesn't play Waterville. So the winner of that game could determine the strength of schedule for either Madison or MDI.
Yeah, Crabtree points are kind of an interesting animal. Because of Class B schedule, we don't play Hamden in the regular season this year or last year, so we nothing against Hamden. I love Coach Lauer's a great coach up there, but we cheer for them to lose every week.
Sure.
Because it's only going to help us in the Crabtree points. But that's really interesting. I think that was very similar last year in Class C as far as a 3-way tie.
Yeah, there's
Maybe it was
a coin flip for first place between Winslow and Old Town.
right. But I guess the best thing for Coach Franzose and his guys to do would be go down to Mount Desert Island and take care of business.
Yeah, just win it and take the whole math out of it. And you guys, a couple of years ago, were in a similar situation where you finished the season strong, big win at Mount Blue, but because you played a weaker Mount Ararat team at the start of the season, were just edged out for that playoff spot.
Yep. That was back when we had some crossover games, and that definitely hurt us. It was a 2-year hiatus where we didn't play Lawrence as well, one of our bigger rivals. So it was really kind of weird. And it's quite frankly disappointing because we did finish strong. We were kind of peaking at the end of the year, and if it weren't for maybe a slow start against Brewer the week before, we would have found ourselves in the playoffs.
Right. Let's look at the Campbell Conference Class D now. Drew, another big game for Oak Hill this week.
Yeah, it's interesting the dynamic that's going on with that. It's kind of like with C, where you have Winslow was winning it all these years, and then you have a team, Madison, beats them and kind of takes the lead. And now we have that going on where Oak Hill's the defending champions, and Winthrop Monmouth comes out and looks like they're asserting themselves as the top team. And this game against Lisbon's going to be a tough one because Lisbon's been a tough matchup for Winthrop Monmouth earlier in the year. Noah Francis is one of the bigger running backs I think that they're expected to be facing,
Definitely.
and so they had a tough time on the ground against Winthrop Monmouth. Alec Brown is a bigger player. He really shredded them up front, and it's just if they have trouble on the ground in that game, it could be they could be finding themselves in a precarious spot.
Right. And in the LTC, we have 3 teams left that are 5-0, which is rare for this time of the season. Got 2 of them playing each other. MCI plays at Dexter on Saturday. Then MCI will play at Orono, the other current undefeated team, a week from now. Orono will come to MCI. And then Orono and Dexter will finish off this kind of round robin the following week. So that league should start to see some playoff positioning shape up here in the next couple of weeks. Remember, they play a 9-week regular season rather than 8, so they can play every team in the league.
That's right.
Okay, for us, for Travis Lazarczyk, I've got, I'm going to start over with that because I'm a moron. I'm Travis Lazarczyk alongside Drew Bonifant. Coach Friedman, thanks for coming in.
Sure, my pleasure.
All right, and we'll see you next week on Gridiron Gurus.